This show is all about learning about what makes successful leaders who they are, but also the challenges along the way. And sometimes those challenges are informed by what happens in our earlier lives. He is one of the two founders at Peto Smart Nutrition, a plant and insect-based pet nutrition startup that provides healthier and more sustainable solutions for our pets.
You are a person, so don't try to pretend. It doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need to rest. But don't give up your values. If some of your values are very core, very strong, keep them.
Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and their personal dreams. Today, I'm delighted that Eduardo Salazar has joined us in the studio. Eduardo is Chilean and was raised in Venezuela, and in a small university town in Indiana, USA. His key themes during his childhood and teenage years were classical piano, maths, football, children's choirs, and reading history. At the age of 22, after finishing his MBA, he took his first corporate job at Colgate-Palmolive in Venezuela. Soon after, he married Irene, and they had 3 boys in a span of 5 years. His professional life took him and his family from Venezuela to Peru, then Hong Kong, Japan, Spain, France, and then the UK, where he currently lives, alternating months in Barcelona. He is one of the 2 founders at Peto Smart Nutrition, a plant and insect-based pet nutrition startup that provides healthier and more sustainable solutions for our pets. He is also an advisor and executive coach, supporting talented founders and senior leaders to build and scale innovative businesses that tackle some of the most pressing societal and environmental challenges. He continues to enjoy sports and play the piano, and is constantly planning adding more countries to the 60 plus he has already visited. Eduardo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Are you in Barcelona or in London?
I'm in Barcelona at the moment.
Good choice.
So I have a little bit more sun than you may have.
Yeah, I think so. It's very cold here in the UK today. So, Eduardo, lovely to have you on the show. Our audience would love to know a bit more about us. So tell us about yourself and where your current focus is.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so you summarized it very well. And I'm originally from South America, and I've enjoyed living in different countries, learning about different cultures. And for the past 4 years, I've been doing the things I want. So I have the pet food business, and I've been helping others also with their businesses, either from a soft skills perspective in coaching or mentoring. Or from hard skills and business proposition, financials, and things like that. I also enjoy music, as you pointed out. I'm a classical pianist. I'm maybe a frustrated jazz pianist. So I still have time to see if I learn some jazz. Stay in touch very frequently with my sons. They're actually coming in December to stay with us. So keeping balance and the balance between family and profession.
And I'm fascinated by the piano. One of the...
Right now...
Yeah? Carry on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying I was fascinated by the piano because it's something that I'm thinking of taking up again. I had lessons when I was younger. So do you perform now, or is it purely for your own pleasure?
It's for my own pleasure. I did perform a lot from the ages of 10 to about 22, 23, mainly classical piano, a little bit of ensemble, because my degree was music engineering in the US. And that's how I managed to pay for my studies in the US in another country. I left when I was 16, so I bet everything on the music. However, then I decided that business, I could do other things. And that's why I did an MBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, this show is all about learning about what makes successful leaders who they are, but also the challenges along the way, and sometimes those challenges are informed by what happens in our earlier lives. And obviously, you had, a very eclectic childhood in terms of moving as well to those different locations. So, what experiences in your life to date have most shaped your leadership style, Eduardo?
So I'm a leader that enjoys, or I'm more comfortable with a providing structure or in a more structured environment. But also, I'm very focused on short to mid-term goals, and I sometimes don't see 10 years down the line. Difficult to predict now what's going to happen in 10 years now in this world. But anyway, I enjoy the shorter term. And I also like to work in small and medium teams. So those are the things I truly enjoy in the work life. Now, going back to childhood, I was raised by my mother. She's also a musician. But she raised me with a lot of discipline and commitment to excellence. So I played the piano since very young, 2 or 3 hours a day, because I wasn't a genius. I didn't have that talent. So I had to dedicate a lot to that. And I had the opportunity to live in another country very early on. So I needed to solve problems because my mom was a full-time student. I was 8. So I had to, first I had to learn how to basic cooking. I had to learn English. That was the first thing I had to do when I joined school. But I also wanted to continue with the piano. So I had a lot of structure in my schedule, school, sports, because I played football, and then going to the actual university to practice rooms to practice my piano. So I early on I had to really motivate myself to do new things. I also was in a children's choir, so doing team things allowed me also to understand how multiple people can perform something that an individual cannot do. I also left home early. I mentioned before I left home when I was 16 to another country. The internet, it was starting, so we didn't have FaceTime, Skype, and all these things. So it was a bit difficult at the beginning. But I was trying new things and I was exploring new things, and that energized me. And that's how I created a little bit of, I need to solve things in a short term and less thinking about what am I going to do next.
Sure. And so you had all of that background context that drove you as a teenager and then in your early 20s. When did you start to notice these superpowers were helping you in terms of those earlier years of leadership?
Well, I managed to do several things that other kids, at least in my school, in my local town in Venezuela, didn't. So I went abroad. I got a scholarship. I put all my bets into that particular school. I didn't apply to other schools, which was a big risk, but I didn't see it at the time. Then I came back and decided, well, I wanted to do something different. So I did an MBA and I want to join a company. Actually, I had moved since I was 20 months was when I moved the first time
Okay.
from Chile to Venezuela, then moved to the US, then went back to another state. So I think that triggered me having the curiosity of being in different places. And that triggered me having the curiosity about learning about people.
Sure. And what I'm hearing from you as well is that focus on short term sometimes well meant there was a sense of urgency and getting things done. So I'm guessing that served you well as well in your 20s.
It did. It did. And at certain points it didn't, but more advanced in my career. However, in my teens and twenties, it helped me a lot achieve what I achieved early on. I married very early as well, and by the time I was 29, I had 3 sons. I was on a I wasn't in a race, but I had my plans that I wanted but I wasn't planning long term. I was trying to do things that I enjoyed, having the balance with the family, but also giving them the opportunity to do other things.
Yeah, super. And that leads into when we start to notice how these things that influence us during our childhood really serve us in our earlier, 20s. But then sometimes it starts to catch up with it in terms of how we form relationships in work as well. So when did you first notice that your childhood experiences maybe were impacting your leadership in a negative way?
So I was raised as Venezuelan, although my family had kept the Chilean culture at home. I lived in the U.S., similar Western culture, but very different from a societal and friendship and outgoing perspective. But then when I moved to Asia, I moved to Peru first, and in South America. We have a little bit of advantage. We all speak the same language, except for Brazil, but there's several million that speak the same language. We were, I mean, the Spanish had a lot of influence in terms of culture, food, religion, the society, the way, the things we enjoy. So moving from Venezuela to Peru wasn't really an impact. It was just another country, another business situation. So I adapted very quickly, and I thought, oh, this is easy. So when they sent me to Hong Kong. I said, well, this is easy, but it wasn't that easy. And this is the first time I realized that although I had lived in a town in the US and I had gone to school with German, Malaysians, Somalis, Pakistanis, I never realized, I guess when you're 8, you don't realize you don't highlight those key differences because you have less baggage. When you're 29, I think I moved to Hong Kong. Then I had realized, oh, okay, this is different. And maybe my style that worked in several other places won't work. Same company, same brands, but I had a big learning, steep learning curve. It's a small area compared to South America, Southeast Asia, I mean, but I realized very quickly that my communication could also hinder or boost any relationship, any business objective. And it is. I mean, they have different religions, they have different foods, and their communication styles are so different, and they're so close. So Thai, Vietnamese, Philippines, Southern China, they're relatively close, but they're very different. In the office, we were about 22 to 25 people with 10 different nationalities. So that helped a little bit because then I had that ability to ask questions. We can go into this in another conversation, but now it's a bit more difficult to ask questions. It could be taken bad. And at the time, I think 20 years ago, it was easier. You could ask questions about your background, your religion, or why you eat this, or why you dress in a certain way. And it was okay. So I made a lot of friends, but I also needed to adapt a lot the way I operated in the business environment. That was in Hong Kong. I managed to go back to Asia and Tokyo, and that was even more difficult. The fact that you're in a variety of cultures, everybody knows that everybody's different. In Japan, I was the odd one, so it was more difficult because I had to learn a lot. And I guess giving advice to other people that have that opportunity, take it. I think it's very rich to have an opportunity to live abroad, but learn about the culture, learn about the country you are, have curiosity about the people rather than the brands, the business, or the technology, because you can learn that later.
Super. And I'm hearing two things going on there. So the first is you obviously had a certain way of being in terms of your discipline, this focus on short term, getting things done, being successful. And yet, when you moved to the East, you found that actually some of your communication style needed to change. And then we've obviously got the fact that cultures anywhere we go that are different to where we've grown up sometimes need a little bit of exploration and curiosity. So tell the audience a little bit more, if you can, about how you adapted your leadership style in those two environments. What did you actually do?
So the first time I was in Asia, I was in Hong Kong. I asked a lot of questions. And I had a great team of people that provided feedback that sometimes you don't even ask because you don't know the impact you have on other people until somebody lets you. Oh, okay, you're not truly aware of how your communication or how you follow up on emails or you calling people on the phone. At the time, it was easier to call people on the phone. Now it's all messages, right? But at the time, you could call people and reach out, and that helped a lot. And that, although I consider myself an introvert. I'm very social, but I consider myself an introvert. That even enhanced it because then I had to listen and observe a lot more than before. So before creating a situation in my head, before having an opinion, and that sometimes is difficult in a corporate environment where we have full of extroverts telling you what to do. When you're laid back a little bit, it then causes, or are you here? Do you really know what's going on? So that it has its pros and cons, but it did help me. It did help me understand other people. Well, in Japan, it was a bit more difficult because there was a bit of a language barrier, and that was, I mean, I arrived, I didn't, not that I learned Japanese, but I learned Japanese to survive, but not to be in the office in the corporate world. And there are a lot of things that I should have learned when I arrived, and not a year later.
What are good examples of things you should have learned?
Simple things about the culture. The history of Japan tells you a lot of things about society as well, and about how people behave in the office, about how the team and how the environment or impacts the individual, about hierarchy as well. Hierarchy is different in different contexts of the world, and then sometimes is praised, and other times is not. In some European cultures, actually, is not, is the more you challenge hierarchy, and the more you challenge people that are higher in the organization, the better it is. Um, so those are the kinds of things that were difficult. There's an informal also. Their office is very formal, but there's an informal way of learning things, and you learn that only to. You can't be 9 to 5 in the office. You have to stretch a little bit and spend some time socially with the people in the work environments. And that's difficult to understand, although we do it in Latin America. But when you're in another culture, you don't really know what is the way they do it locally.
Thank you for that. And that brings me to just being curious about in the West when you were there and in the East, how did you make sure that you created time for your own personal well-being because you had a lot of other interests that you've described already from your childhood? What were the differences there in terms of the challenges around that?
Yeah, so I the good thing is I had three very young kids, so I had to spend time with them, and that took me off the stresses of work. Didn't mean that I didn't have stress. I do remember having to fly on a Saturday a number of times, or on a Sunday a number of times, and I wasn't happy about it. I could understand the reason, but I wasn't happy about it. At the time, it was okay. I think nowadays, 20 years later, is not, I think companies don't expect that, or big corporations don't expect that. At the time, it was yes. I'm here to serve, and I'm being paid, so I have to do it. And that's one of the things probably that stretched me a little bit, because I know it was against a little bit about against my values. I did the two things I also did to get my head off was the piano. So I always carried my piano around, and I always moved my piano around. And I started running. I started running in Tokyo, I think, or a little bit in Hong Kong, but I started running more seriously in Tokyo, and that helped a lot. That helped a lot. The piano and the running distract, and you need to do something that takes your head off thinking. Running not always does. The piano does. You need to have some activity that you really have to concentrate a lot to make sure you don't start thinking. The mind is very, very, very fast, and you can't really control your mind. So the mind wanders, and the mind goes away very quickly. So if you're running, you probably start thinking, what I have to do next, the travel, a situation, something, a problem you have to solve. I guess if you're playing golf, I'm not a golfer, but if you play the piano, yes, you're very fully concentrated, and that's something that helps. That helps a lot. Get your mind at rest, because otherwise it's 24/7.
Sure. And also, I think there's something to be said if people don't play the piano out there in terms of just having a creative outlet. I think too many leaders, again, stay very much in their heads and don't have that creative outlet, which just makes them think in different ways.
And I think, yes, it doesn't have to be music. Music, I consider it very powerful. It is very structured. Classical music is very structured, so it helps you understand many things. Intellectually, it helps a lot. Also, I read music before I read letters, so I don't know if that helped me read letters. Um, didn't help me learn new languages well as an adult, but it did help me structure in a way. If it's not a sport because you don't enjoy sport, it's something that takes your mind off the business. It can't be politics because politics will
Yeah.
default to business. It can't be the current world situation. It will default to business. It has to be something very, very far apart from your for your particular activity, professional activity.
Super. And we're going to talk about your entrepreneurial journey in a few minutes. But before that, maybe just take us towards the end of your corporate career and what leadership challenges you were finding there. And again, how your superpowers from your childhood were helping you to cope with some of those.
Yeah, the corporate world, I think it's improving at the time, but at the moment, sorry. My last was ended in 2019, and I think more and more it was about managing internal discussions, internal, I don't want to call it politics, but internal people management, rather than managing what's out there and being focused on what you're serving out there in society, whether you're selling drinks, medicines, or pet food. There's a lot of internal, and this is a lot of there's a lot of challenges because sometimes you have to pretend, and sometimes you have to say things that you know that are not particularly right or not really with your values, but in pro of the organization or what you're trying to do or the team, you probably have to flex a little bit. And I wasn't feeling comfortable with that. I did sell, yeah, I did sell through my career sugary cereals and sugary drinks. But at some point, I also realized I want to do something that is right. I want to do something that is good for society. It doesn't mean that we can't eat a chocolate every now and then, but it's not right to actively promote it. I would guess we all have a choice, and it won't affect our decisions. However, the reality is that I want to do something that is good for society, but also in the right category, but also good for people. And I think in the corporate world was getting a little bit toxic. And again, it depends on the corporate, in the country, in the situation. I'm generalizing a little bit. I don't want to be specific.
Sure. So what I'm hearing from you is there was a
So
yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is there was a disconnect with the corporate world that you were finding, and that inability to be authentic in that sense. But you still took a risk and made a decision to obviously move into entrepreneurial world, which again our audience were very interested in how you did that and the challenges with that.
Sure. At some point when I left the corporate world, what I decided to do was I did an MBA. I finished in 1995. So by 2019, I needed to update several things. So I did a master's in digital business. But at the same time, I did a training in executive coaching and how to help people. I had mentored people, and I had the basics of coaching, but I didn't have actually a formal training. And I decided that I wanted to start something that would give back to society. So I don't know, sugar-free chocolate or better food for pets, or vitamins or something that would also help people in the everyday challenges of your life in terms of nutrition, in terms of health, and in terms of pet. I had worked in the pet world, and the pet I'm a dog person, so although I work with cats, I'm a dog person, and the relationship you have with the dog, the accountability, the responsibility that my kids had with the dog, and the loyalty that a dog has, it made me say, okay, I want to do something also for dogs. And there are proven big companies are doing a lot of work on proven emotional benefits for people that have dogs. So I decided something that is good I want to do something for dogs. And then it starts, okay, what can I do for dogs? And then I need money, right? So I partnered with a former colleague and we started, it was COVID time. So we walked a lot. It walked a lot in parks and we talked about what could we do? What could we do back for a society that is right? What could we do that is right? He had also a big corporate career in different countries. We both had lived in Japan at some point. So we not defaulted, but we chose dog food. But then what do you do with dog food? And we started preparing recipes with third parties recipes, and we came up with great biscuits for dogs, and that's how we started our Peto, which is our plant and insect dog treats business.
Sure. And what was
That's how it all started.
yeah.
It's all by
Yeah,
conversations.
yeah, and I guess what they'll be interested in is what's been the biggest challenge in adapting from a corporate environment into obviously having your own business as a co-founder and everything that comes with that. What's been the biggest challenge?
So I want to go back to my initial corporate world. And I was in an organization. I was the best school I had, and at this, well, I will name it, called Palmolive, because I had to learn a lot about other things. So sales, manufacturing, recipes, R&D, and how it relates to getting a product out there. However, it was hierarchical. So there was authority, and it was business presentations, formal. And I think that formed me as a professional throughout my 25 years. So I was in the corporate world, I was formal, I was hierarchical in a way, without being aware or very fully conscious. But I think that's something I learned unconsciously. So in the entrepreneurial world, the first thing is you're on your own. So it gets a bit lonely. I mean, it's two of us, but it gets lonely because you need the connection with people. Again, I'm an introvert, but I do need people around me. Not 100, but 10 is great. Um, and that's the first thing. The second thing, and I think that gave me the master's I did in digital business in 19, gave me a little bit of appetite for learning that I had lost a little bit because I was very focused on doing things. And the appetite for learning, I think, is very important nowadays because technology advances at a speed that we can't control. The world moves very fast. The world has conflicts, military conflicts. So the situation is COVID. So there's so many things that if you don't learn quickly, then you fall behind. And I think this is the biggest learning for us was, okay, we're both marketeers, but we need to learn about supply chain. How do we optimize our logistics? How do we do email marketing? Because we hadn't done that ourselves. Then how do we convert people? Because we have a great product, but nobody knows about it. So the learning curve it's been an expensive entrepreneurial master's degree, having done this with my business partner. And we're still there. It's very difficult. It's very difficult because as a mass consumption product, as a consumer product, is you need a lot. You need to sell lots of these, thousands, millions to make money. And at the beginning, you don't sell thousands, millions. You sell in the tens or hundreds, and that becomes very difficult to make it work financially.
Sure, but I'm hearing your passion and obviously that enthusiasm coming out for this product. So I'm sure it will sell millions in the future. So now let's move on to the audience listening to your story, and obviously that real mix of cultures that you've experienced during your years and having to adapt your leadership style. So, if you were to summarize people that were resonating with your story, what advice would you give to leaders out there who can channel their early experiences, which sometimes may have got in the way of them succeeding long term, but turning that into sustainable leadership for them? What advice comes to mind?
So any leader it doesn't have to be the corporate environment as we know it. It could be government, it could be sports, it could be NGOs. I think in any environment, the first thing is think about giving back. So you have a job, they pay you, you work, but at some point, think about giving back. And it doesn't have to be early in your career, but the earlier you do it, the better. We live in a society that is very individualistic in general terms. I mean, some cultures are very, very collective, but in general, the Western world is more individualistic and praises individuals. But at some point, since we live in a network, in a society, give back. Um, then the other thing is you are a person. So don't try to pretend that you are Captain America or somebody or Terminator, somebody that doesn't need to sleep, doesn't need to eat, doesn't need to rest. You can fly, change time zones, do everything because at some point it will hit you. So you're a human being. You can be vulnerable, and make others understand that too. That you expect others to be vulnerable, and it's okay to be tired. It's okay not wanting to fly every week from one continent to the next, or it's okay not to fly on a Saturday for a Monday meeting. So that's another key thing I would recommend. Um, but also, given depending on the culture you were raised or what your parents gave you as key values and beliefs, don't give that up. Don't try to break those because those are ingrained. So When you try to change that, then you become in an internal conflict, and that's very difficult. So as I said, be yourself. It's a bit of a cliche, be yourself, but don't give up your values. If some of your values are very core, very strong, keep them, and then be vocal about them, because other people may not know them because they don't know you in depth. So I think those are the key things I would highlight that helped me later in my career.
Sure. Thank you, Eduardo. And let's talk about the future now. You talked about what you've been doing since you set the business up and how you've retrained as well. But what about the next 5 or 10 years for you? What will you be in service of? And how can people contact you if they want to collaborate with you in some way?
So right now, I mentioned the executive coaching. I've been doing team coaching to senior leaders in Europe, and I'm doing a lot of executive coaching into individuals. There's a mix of executive coaching and sometimes even mentoring on their careers, and that's where I'm focusing at the moment. And by chance, I've received from SMEs requests to help them also with their business, not also from their soft skills, but also from their value proposition. How do we change something? How do we go to market? And even how do we make our financials work? So I'm working with some SMEs in their business as well, including people, because now I think that's a key. It has always been, but I think now it has taken more importance to be a key part of the success of a business. That's what I plan to do in the next 5 to 10 years. I would hope that my pet business gets even larger and larger, that I can launch new products and be even more active there as well.
Great. And where can people find you? What's the best way to
By the
contact
way,
you?
people, I was going to say that I believe a lot in networking, and I try to connect, and because the dot cannot, or it cannot be a straight line, a connection, but it may be something that someone or someone else can connect, or you can help other people connect. So I'm very open to people contacting me on LinkedIn right now. Today is the easiest way. Of course, I have my phone number there, my email, but I'm very open. Send me a short note why you want to contact me, and I'm very open to contact people globally. Actually, of course, I'm developing more and more my European connection and less my Asian and Latin America, given the fact I've been here 12 years. But feel free.
Super. Well, Eduardo, I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with our audience today. I know that many of them will have been inspired to reflect on their own leadership, how they might lead themselves more effectively, how they might make a different approach to leading others as well. So, Eduardo, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Andrew, and hope this leads to further connections.
Great. I hope everyone out there enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can find out more information about conscious leadership and self-coaching by just typing in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser. So until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious. Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.